For me, one of the greatest honors that our students at Mount Madonna have is to meet this gentleman here, Samdhong Rinpoche. For me, he makes a connection between the Buddhist teachings, which go back so far, and ideas that are just coming out now in modern education about what real education is. We asked Rinchen Kondo today a little bit about what real education is. And in the last interview, he spent some time talking about education. It so ties in with the ethos of our program at Mount Madonna and this class. Because at one level, when he talks about education, we're talking about the development of discernment. And it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to have an example of discernment sitting with you. And today we have that privilege and that honor. And to me, this is one of those times when hopefully you'll be able to revisit this on the video over time and actually let it sink in. Because these kinds of teachings, you live with them, and gradually they expose themselves to you for what their meaning is. He's one of my greatest teachers in my life. I pay attention to what he says. So thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us this time with you. First, is there anything you'd like to say as any opening remark you'd like to say?
No, I just only wish to say welcome to India, and particularly welcome to Dharamsala. And one thing I must tell in advance is I have nothing new or special which might be interested to you or beneficial to you. Nevertheless, I have spent a major portion of my life in the field of education, and then also I have many close friends who have been thinking about the education system all over the world, particularly in India, particularly after the India's independence. The education system has been challenged, questioned, and tried to modify, and not very successful. So I have been a part of this journey after 1959. So there may be some experience, otherwise I'm not a so-called educationist or some experts in education. So please go ahead.
So my name's Nate, and I was wondering if you could tell us about how your journey from Tibet to India in 1959 informed your life.
1959, I was just 19 years old, and happily and peacefully studying in my monastery till the 10th March of 1959. 10th March was just after the Molam festival. Molam festival is one of the greatest festivals in a year in Central Tibet, where all three major Buddhist monastic institutions get together, the Drepung, Dasra, and the Gadan, for 3 weeks in Lhasa, and during which the three monasteries' top scholars who are graduating from the Geshe-la-Ramba degree have to give the final examination there. And that year, His Holiness was also one of the candidates. And it was very special occasion, and we are so happy. And there are about 18 other Geshis, and including His Holiness, the examination process were completed, and the Molam was completed. I think it was around 1st March or 2nd March, the Malam festival concluded. And then 10th March, the uprising had happened. And after 10th March, 7 days passed through a great deal of tension, fear, and doubts. Then 17th March, the night His Holiness escaped from Nobulinka. Then 18th, 19th, 20th, 3 days just passed. And the night around 12 o'clock on the 20th March, the bombardment started. So I remained in the monastery the whole day of the 21st, and Sira monastery was partially damaged, and Nobulinka, almost the surroundings are destroyed, and Chopuri, one of the monasteries, are completely damaged, and a few bomb shells have been landed near Dipo monastery, which shook the whole Dipo monastery. So then we are not able to stay in the monastery, and the night of the 21st we escaped. And then it took about 20-25 days, I do not remember exactly. And in the first week of April, we arrived in the India border. And we remained in the Indian border for about 10 days. Then we were accepted as a political refugee and gradually taken inside India. And in the Assam, since we are coming through the Arunachal Pradesh, the base camp was Assam near Tezpur, Mesamari, and we stayed about 4 or 5 months there. Then gradually the people are distributed for certain kind of work and rehabilitation, all this. So through my journey, 2 or 3 nights are very hardship. Otherwise it was okay, not much problem. So since then we live in India, 1959, last 54, 55 years. So that is the whole story. It's not very big event, but it was changing the whole perspective of life is completely changed. So that is something big happening for us.
Hi, my name's Isabella. In the foreword on your website, you said, people are taught to compare and compete, so that ignorance and greed escalate endlessly, reducing individuals to mere consuming machines. We have lost the power of discernment and cannot differentiate between need and greed. Can you speak more on the loss of discernment in our society and how to reverse that trend?
This is my personal view about the present world. And it is not only my view, there are many scholars and leaders, not only spiritual leaders, but socio-economic experts also do agree with this viewpoint. But I do not say our viewpoint is the correct one and the others are wrong. Each individual has a different worldview, and it is right. Only what we are saying is no one should carry a blind faith. Everybody should be a rational mind and a power of discrimination, and with one's own logic and reasoning, whatever findings, one has the right to believe it until it is logically proved wrong. Otherwise, one has. If we look back to the history of mankind or the history of the this planet Earth. Millions of years have been passed, and there was not much change, nor there was any urgency for the humanity. There was a limitation of physical comforts in the ancient time, but that physical discomfort was compensated by peace of mind. And once a person is happy in his or her mind, the physical discomforts are negligible. They can be ignored or they can be overlooked. Then the science and technology developed. It was not a long history, at most 300 years, 250 years. And even the most powerful modern scientific technology is just 200 years old. And then 20th century has a very special kind of change. These changes have been termed as revolutions. I don't know they are in real sense revolutions or not, but there was a tremendous change taking place. And this change, if we try to find out the cause of this change, the cause of this change is industrialization. The humanity has regained or rediscovered the machine, the technique, and which empowered the humanity to produce the commodities are much more than the human need. And in the ancient time, every village or every town, the economy is interdependent to whole members of society, and they were self-sufficient, and things are being produced according to the needs of the members of society, and that needs are being fulfilled. And beyond need, they are not consuming the resources, nor they are overuse the nature, and they are very friendly with the environment. And the needs are appropriate to give a comfort to the physical body, and also to give a satisfaction to the mindset, and that keeps a balance. The whole system of universe is depend on middle path or balance, avoiding the extremes. Whenever we touch to the extremes or lose the balance, then there's a problem, there's a challenge. So when the human gain the capacity to produce much more than our need, then the producers need to market them, because what they produced cannot go in the West. They must gain some profit out of it, and for that they need a system of market economy. And then they need the market. They are quite intelligent, and they think how to market the surplus productions, manufactured productions, and they find that human greed is very easy to exploit. And in order to exploit the human greed, they find a very powerful method, that is comparison and then competition. So today the people lost the way to find out what is my need. They always look for others. If he or she has this thing, why not I should have it? So one shoe to protect your feet is not sufficient. You need different color, different shape, different usage. You need one kind of slipper or shoe for your bathroom, the another kind for your working, the third kind for your football, and the fourth kind for your cricket, and another thing for your going office or formal. So by this way, multiplying and your needs. And the system of comparison, comparing and competition has damaged the balance between competition and cooperation. The human beings are social living beings. In today's social scientists used to say human beings are social animals. I don't think they are animals, but they are social beings. Since they are social beings, they have to depend on others' cooperation. Without others' cooperation, human cannot survive. There are certain species in the animal kingdom, they can live all alone. And even their parents did not look back right from their birth, just lay eggs somewhere, and then from there, crocodiles they are quite independent, but human beings are not. If you don't receive the compassion, affection, and love of your parents, a human child cannot survive. So we are very much depend on family, community, society. Even a piece of cloth we are wearing or a dish we are eating, apparently it is ready to use, but if you look into it deeply, numerous people are involved into that. If you look to a piece of cloth, the farmers grow the holes or the cotton, and which has a lot of work. And when it comes on the cotton, then it have to be spinning, and then it has to go to the weaver, and the weaver put a lot of labor to weave it, and then it has to be drying, colored, then it goes to the tailor, cut and stitch, and then it comes to you. So when it reaches to you as a cloth, almost 100 people have contributed something to that. And a grain of rice or wheat, the farmers, how much effort have put there, and then how it is transported to one place to another place, and then it is put in a store, then it comes to the market, you purchase it, and then you make it flour, and then the kitchen you cook it. So with so many people's contribution, you are able to eat some food. So we are dependent on cooperation. And the balance between cooperation and competition, the competition always think of winner and loser. No one compete for the sake of losing. Everyone competes for sake of winning. That means you have to defeat someone, and that person who defeat by you, you cannot expect some cooperation from that person. So this is one of the disbalances. And similarly, by this way, then the greed is very much increased, exploited disproportionately, then it has many other consequences. One consequence is, since you have to compete and you have to win, then your own rights are to be considered very important. So then the balance between the right and the responsibility is also destroyed. So you always talk about right, individual right, more or so. See, we have a huge organization, so-called the United Nations Organization, and it is considered to be the largest and most powerful organization in this world. They have a declaration of human rights, and they never thought about. They have not a piece of paper about human responsibility, human duties, and that is completely neglected. And similarly, the importance of society and the individual, that also need to be a balance. And this balance also destroyed due to talking about more importance given to the individual right. And when there's a conflict between individual right and society's right, and the individual right is trying to override the community or the society's right, and so forth. So there are many this kind of thing. So now the human way to look to the things, we are considered to be a consumer. No more we are user. In the ancient time, the humanities are user of resources. Resources can be used, and the use means you are using the thing and you are also recycling or restoring whatever you have used. Usefulness and using has a connotation that you are not destroying it. It has a very good expression in Hindi or Sanskrit, upayog and upabhog. Upayog means just to use it for your need, and at the same time you're giving something back. If we are using some natural resources and we try to recreate or regenerate that resource for the coming generation. So now we are become a consumer. Consumer means just to consume. Consume is just to destroy and not considering for recycling or restoring or recreating that resource. So that creates the, what I should say, the environmental destruction and the scarcity of resources. Now the people are talking about the scarcity of drinking water, and there are forecasts that 2020 or 2030 the world will face scarcity of drinking water. And we are already facing the clean air to breathe. Water and air is the essential commodity for surviving. We can live weeks together without any food, but we cannot live without water more than 7 to 8 hours. And we cannot live a good year more than 1 hour or half an hour. So these are the basic and essential commodity for surviving of not only human beings, all sentient beings. But we have polluted the air, and we have polluted the water, and there's more and more scarcity of this. So our outlook is the whole world is either resource or consumer. There's no third thing. Even the human beings are being considered as a resource, and they are to be processed through so-called education. And when we arrived in India in 1959, when the Tibetan schools are established, at that time we used to have a Ministry of Education in the central government. Now we don't have. This is Ministry of Human Resource Development. All the childs are resources, and you have to process them according to the needs of the corporate houses. What they tell, what kind of human they need. Engineers or doctors or accountants or bureaucrats. So by this way, the human resource planning and human resource development, which suppresses the basic individual capacity or intelligence, and they are not allowed to awake the human intelligence. They just say, they just impose an information, not a knowledge, information according to their own curriculum or their own needs. So by this way, we are deprived of awakening our inner intelligence, which is of a natural gift we have by birth, and that has been suppressed, and on the contrary, we are being indoctrinated and input a kind of brainwashing or indoctrination. So you have to look everything this way. You have to compete. You have to, if you have to survive, you have to compete. And if you need to survive, you must be a good consumer. So this kind of indoctrination always goes there. So by this way, my late friend Jiddu Krishnamurti used to say over and over again that education means to assist the student to awake his or her inner intelligence so that he or she can be flower in goodness. Goodness cannot be trained or taught. Goodness need to be a natural flowering. And for that you need to awake your own inner intelligence so that you are not carried away by advertisements or by indoctrination. So you are able to discriminate what is right and what is wrong. A power of distinction, that's the wisdom that you must have. So this is my outlook. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. So
My name's Savannah, and what are the most important aspects of Tibetan culture and religion that you're trying to preserve as a teacher?
there are many important, so I don't know how to choose one. Your question is most important aspect of Tibetan cultural. The word cultural is being used in so many different ways. As I mentioned, when culture is translated into Hindi or Sanskrit, it comes the Sanskritic. Sanskritic means well prepared or well matured. and that comes to Tibetan language Lik Chang. Li means well, Chang means well practiced and well acquainted. So therefore, in our vocabulary, the culture goes, the word of culture goes only with the positive things, good things, not the negative things. But in the Western, all habit is, I think, calling the culture, because some of my Western friends used to say culture of war, culture of violence. So in our concept, the violence and the war and the destruction does not have a culture. All these are uncultured activities. So by this way, in our outlook, culture is something, a mind is fully cultivated into the positive way, and when it is fully cultivated, then that is a culture. So by this way, Tibetan culture is by and large influenced or built on Buddhist philosophy. And His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, the entire Buddhist thought is divided into 3 categories: Buddhist Dharma, that means Buddhist religion, Buddhist science, and Buddhist philosophy. Buddhist science and Buddhist philosophy is common to everyone, and Buddhist Dharma or Buddhist religion is only for the Buddhists who are having faith in Buddhism. Dharma is an individual, but philosophy and science is all common. And what he talk about science is Buddhist psychology, Buddhist science of mind, and Buddhist science about the physics and metaphysics. All these are belonging to Buddhist science. And philosophy is like Madhyamik philosophy or mind alone philosophies. It may be roughly say idealism or materialism. So this kind of, it can be compared with Western philosophy also. So the culture, what the Tibetan people have preserved for the last 1,300 years is a culture of non-violence. The culture of non-violence was lost in Tibet itself for the last 200 years. Lost means much degraded. It was not strong. That is the only reason Tibet was occupied by Communist China so easily, because we are not able to resist non-violently. We are trying to resist by counter-violence. So counter-violence is unequal, so therefore we are not able to resist. So in a very short thing, I can say the most important Tibetan culture which need to be preserved is the culture of non-violence. Culture of non-violence based on 3 basic principles. The 3 basic principles are: all sentient beings are by nature equal. There's no higher or lower, near or known. All sentient beings are equal. The reason is all sentient beings are looking for happiness and trying to avoid unhappiness. No one is willing to accept unhappiness, and everyone is looking for happiness, peace, pleasure, not wanting misery, pain, or suffering. So this is right from the small insect to the elephants or dinosaurs. This is by nature. And the third basic reality is that each one has the equal right to look for, to endure for achieving happiness, and to do avoid the misery and unhappiness. So therefore, there is no basis to discriminate among the sentient beings. Someone are for the loving kindness, and some the others are for the object of hate and anger. So therefore, violence is not acceptable from one's own selfish viewpoint, or violence is not acceptable for the sake of others' welfare. Violence is not acceptable for the welfare of the community or society. All these three levels, one's own selfish level, if you are violent, then they are bound to be counter-violence. The counter-violence is you may able to face or you may not able to face. Then the principle of survival of the fittest might be prevail at that time. So if you want to preserve, to protect your own benefits, your own selfish ends, you need to be non-violent. And of course the others, you are not willing to accept violence to you, then how you can expect the others would accept your violence? So therefore, from the other viewpoints also it is not acceptable. And for the peace of family, for the peace of community, or for the peace of society, in that level also it's not. It is not a religious doctrine. Of course, religious taught about the non-violence, and you are a religious practitioner, you have to practice non-violence. But even you are a non-believer, having no faith in any religion, yet a secular, totally secular person, we cannot accept violence as something good, which is acceptable as human being. So therefore, the first and foremost is a non-violent culture, which we were not able to preserve properly, and if we are able to restore it, then I think the Tibet question or Tibet problem can also be solved amicably. When I was in the administration, I used to say publicly that if we are able to prepare 100 sincere and truth non-violent people among our society, we can regain our autonomy within 24 hours. But we are not able to produce or prepare such non-violent people, satyagrahis. Gandhi have told the same thing. When Gandhi was in the Tibet, the Indian freedom struggle, he used to say, if I get 100 satyagrahi means a person who involves in the non-cooperation movement, who has absolutely no trace of hate or anger towards British people, and full of loving kindness to them, but disagreement, the action what they are taking. So Buddha have said that the negative emotion is the cause of injustice, and the person who are doing the injustice is not to be blamed, because he or she is under the influence of the negative emotions. So we have to fight against the action, and we have to love and compassionate to the actor. So we are not able to differentiate between action and actor. So therefore, the most important is non-violence, non-violent culture, and then which is pervasive, the vast treasure of knowledge which coming from Nalanda, Takshila and Dharamsala, etc., which are preserved now only in Tibetan language and Tibetan tradition. So we are trying to, His Holiness is trying to give it back to the Indian people. So it is coming from India. So these are some of the important things.
Hi, my name's Isabella. What do you think are the greatest challenges facing Tibetans who've grown up outside of their home country?
That you may find more appropriately. I am not very close in touch with the now the Tibetan Exile community. Since last 6 years, I have been retired from all official responsibilities. But generally I see the challenges are twofold. A challenge which is facing by entire humanity. The Tibetans are no exception. We are facing that challenge squarely. And among those challenges, such as increase of violence and a gap between have and have-nots, and environmental degradation, and then so-called civilizational conflicts or religious intolerance. These are the present world challenges which keep the humanity on a very negative side. And then apart from that, the Tibetans living outside Tibet, very tiny population. By number, it is not big. When I was in office, the total population of Exile community is about 155,000, and out of which about 90,000 lives in India, and the rest, about 60,000, all over the world. But I don't know, in spite of such a small population, the visibility is quite strong. Wherever you go, you can see some of the Tibetans in exile. I don't know why, but it is a fact. And now the social structure is that the Tibetans who have came to the exile in 1959 are of my age group or older than me. So 60 or 70% of them already passed away. So now I think 20 or 30% might be remain, but all of them in the very old age, like me. And the rest population is born, brought up in exile, number one, and a few population who have crossed the border in recent times. Recent time means after 70s and 80s, 90s, then after 2008, that has been also closed. So these are the little younger generation. So who crossed later on are mostly born and brought up under the Chinese occupation. So they are largely educated or not educated, they are under occupation. And who are born and brought up outside, their mindset is very mixture. There is some kind of influence of tradition, Tibet tradition, and also greater influence of the host country. For example, they living in India, they might be go through Tibetan schools. The Tibetan schools also not different from the Indian schools. Only the Tibetan language is taught. Otherwise, they have to go through the board examinations. That is the Indian system, and then they go to the colleges or universities of India and mixed up with the Indian people. And they are half Indians and half Tibetans, and they have a strong sense of I don't know what I should say, a kind of attachment to their own nation, the Tibet race or Tibet nation, and they are confused how to regain their nationhood or how to reconcile their future. They have no clear concept of what is free Tibet, and some of them think the independence is only freedom, and many other think about His Holiness' teaching of the middle path, remain as a part of PRC, yet the national regional autonomy as enshrined in the Chinese constitution should be provided. And there are few, they do not have any sense of how to return into one's own motherland, and they are thinking how to take up career wherever they live or they stay. And the basic problem I see is a problem of identity. As traditional Tibetans, they do not think about anything identity. But the younger generation in Exile who are gone through modern education, they are being taught some kind of nationalism and some kind of feeling for identity. And this feeling of identity makes them restless. And I don't know how to remedy. These are the challenges. These challenges are invisible. Only few people can feel it, but it is a pervasive challenge. Each individual is been facing. But you interview the individuals, their challenge may be livelihood, their challenge may be economic resources, and how to settle themselves with security, the sense of insecurity. But the sense of insecurity among the Tibetans, from my viewpoint, is a sense of insecurity which have come out of the sense of void of identity, unclarity of their own identity, and that makes a sense of insecurity. So this is my outlook. I may be wrong, but I see like this.
Hi, my name is
Hi.
Alfio. In an interview with Mount Madonna School, you talked about reading a newspaper headline which said, "Never mind human rights, money matters." You said, this speaks for the mindset of the modern leadership of the nations. There are very good people at the grassroots, but the leadership, those who matter, and those who have the power for things to be done, they're only looking for trade and economic gain. My question is, what do we need to do to begin to shift society's ideas of success and reorder our priorities?
I don't know. This is a very big question. to shift the society's priority is a very big question. What we can do at this moment as an individual or as a mindful or rational person, we can think of shifting our own priorities. Gandhi used to say, what you wish to change the society, change yourself first, and then you can begin something. The crux is that all this disharmony or negative things, or if you analyze them, they are all rooted into the greed, human greed. Gaining for more economic power or economic resources. For a poor individual is also looking for his or her own livelihood to make better and to earn more. And big business houses and corporate houses, only the scale is different, otherwise the greed is the same. And the nations, all the nations are now everything can be compromised. Only the economic game cannot be compromised. That's why I quoting this, never mind human rights. So human rights is negotiable. And economic game is non-negotiable. So that has to be achieved. So why this kind of mindset? It's because you have a deep-rooted greed for economic power. And there is a misconception, the misconception which is created intentionally by the producers or by the corporate houses, is that economic well-being is the only source for human happiness or human well-being. And every happiness or every good things can be purchased if you are rich enough. And if you are not rich enough, and you cannot achieve any happiness. This concept is being indoctrinated in the mind of people very deep-rootedly. So therefore now, all the so-called democratic countries, when they go for elections, the election campaign is only centered economic development, trade, economic development, trade. Except these two, there's no mention of education, health, or social well-being. They're taking for granted if economic is developed and the infrastructures are built, the human beings would be very happy. And in that case, among the rich society, there should not be any unhappiness. There should not be any cases of suicide and other things in the rich family. But unfortunately today, we read in the newspapers and the media that the rate of suicide is much higher in the developed countries than in the poor countries. So it shows that the economic only cannot give the physical, mental satisfaction. Physical comfort may be purchased, but mental peace and mental satisfaction cannot be purchased. That shall have to be achieved from the inside. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is trying to bring a suggestion or idea of universally acceptable ethics for believers and non-believers equal. And he is trying to suggest the people right from the childhood to watch one's own mind and to differentiate the negative emotions and positive emotions, and watch what the negative emotions give you, good things or bad things, and what the positive emotions give you, good things or bad things. So this kind of analytical approach to one's own insight, one's own mindset, then we might be able to he is very polite. He do not attack the modernity or the greed as I used to, but in a different way. He is also talking how to reduce the human greed and how to increase the loving kindness and mindfulness. So by this way, we might be able to shift the human attitude from present to some better way. So this is his hope, and we are working on that. It may be helpful for many people. Of course, it cannot be bring a change overnight, but the seeds of change can be sown, and we have to wait long time to achieve them.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Isaac, and Congressman John Lewis, who worked with Martin Luther King, told us that nonviolence is not something you just turn on and off. It is a way of life. So can you speak more on the commitment and process of nonviolence, and do you constantly have to be vigilant about it?
The statements of Martin Luther King is very powerful, and he speaks from his heart and from experience. And he was a very faithful follower of Gandhi's idea, and he very rightly said that non-violence is not like a light bulb you can switch on or you can switch off. It is a way of life. Unless and until you reduce and subside the anger and the hate, the non-violent behavior cannot be achieved. So to achieve the non-violence as a way of life, you have to have control over your negative emotion, which is called hate, anger, jealousy, or this shall have to be, I don't use the word controlled, but shall have to be reduced, and antidotes of these emotions need to be cultivated in our mind. So the process is, I think, the analytical thinking, contemplating what is the benefit of violence and what is harms of violence, what is benefit of non-violence and what is harm of non-violence. And any problem of individual or any problem of family or community, if you look into the depth, no problem can be sustainably solved through violent methods. And all problem, whatever it may be, big or small, can be solved if you are able to use the non-violent methods appropriately and sincerely. So if you don't want any problem or challenge and you don't want any suffering, then only the way is to approach to that problem through non-violent solutions. Here I am reminded of another Martin Luther King's statement, which is related to the present situation, present world situation. He said, we have no choice between violence and non-violence. Only choice is between non-violence or non-existence. The power of destruction is developed in such scale by the humanity, and which is demonstrated very clearly in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's old time now. After that, such destructive powers much more. So he was very right that now we have no choice between violence and non-violence. And the only choice left to us is non-violence or non-existence. If we go into violence in search of any solution to any problem, national, international, or individual or family, so therefore non-violence shall have to be a way of life. Again, there's two different approach to non-violence. In the modern times, non-violence adopted as a faith and non-violence adopted as a strategy. So non-violence adopted strategy has no value. It is not non-violence. And non-violence practiced or implemented from a faith, that is only real non-violence. So if non-violence is used as a strategy, then the strategy can be changed at any time, and then they may come back to violence as well. So the faith on the power of non-violence is the foundation before using non-violence methods to solve any kind of problem. So that is difficult to cultivate. And once you cultivate your faith in the non-violence, but you are intelligent enough and you are able to analyze the pros and cons of violence and non-violence, weigh them properly, then you will find non-violence has much, much more value than the violence methods.
So, in an article by The Guardian in 2011, you said when referring to the Tibetan government in exile that without the Dalai Lama, we will not have any legitimacy in the eyes of Tibetans. It is a real question before us, and we have to find a solution. Since making that statement 6 years ago, have you found any possible answers to what needs to happen in the Tibetan community with the Dalai Lama separated from the governing structure?
Yes, when I given the interview to The Guardian, it was a very much relevant question in her mind. And this idea remained for a long time. Now, recently a book come out by a German author. She lives in India. It is in English language. Tibet, from theocracy to democracy, and in which the process of devolving His Holiness political responsibilities to the elected leadership, and in which he have given she has given all the details of the process. It was 11th March 2011, His Holiness finally gave a message to the Tibet Parliament in Exile that now in this session you must amend your charter and His Holiness should be free from all his traditional political responsibilities. And at that time, the Parliament in Exile unanimously resolved that His Holiness should not do this and he must remain as a head of political leadership, continue. And he rejected that. And thereafter, another request was made. He may be remain as a symbolic head, like British Queen or King. Not much. That also he rejected. And then finally, the question is, without His Holiness involvement, the people of Tibet will not give legitimacy to the Central Tibet administration or Tibet government in exile, because the election system is practiced only by the Tibetans in diaspora, and the Tibetans inside Tibet has no way to participate in it. And by that way, the majority of the 6 million people of Tibet who are inside Tibet is looking His Holiness as the symbol of Tibet. Tibet is the Dalai Lama and the Dalai Lama is the Tibet. And since he is the heading an organization, that is the real representative organization of the Dalai Lama. And therefore I said we are not able to gain a legitimacy. Then after a great deal of discussion between His Holiness and the Tibet Parliament in Exile and a small committee for amending, so we finally request him not to dissociate himself from the overall setup of the organization, which may called by the Tibetans as the Tibet government in Exile or by others as Central Tibet administration. There must be some kind of relationship between the Dalai Lamas and the organization. So we have added 2 clauses to the charter as a preamble. And in that preamble, it is said that the successive the Dalai Lamas will be the protector and the guiding force of the Tibetans. That's one. And therefore, he will have, by virtue of the institution of Dalai Lama, he will have the power to advise the administration or the parliament from time to time whenever he feels necessary. And also the parliament or the Kashak, the cabinet, can approach him for advice or guidance. And then he also represents the Tibet when he meets the outside leaderships, the nation, international scenario, the leader of countries. At that time he will represent the Tibet. And also the representatives of His Holiness in the various countries will remain as His Holiness representative. So these 3 things are included into the preamble of the charter. So that is we consider to give certain kind of legitimacy, although he does not have any constitutional power, but still the constitution or the charter says he is the protector and the real representative of the Tibet. Therefore, he must look after this organization. So this relationship is kept there. So of course, there's much difference now. 6 years have passed, and it has slowly gaining the legitimacy, and I think now it will go on like this.
So I'm curious about what you have heard Samdhong Rinpoche say that has struck you. What have you heard that has...
Sorry, yes.
I found what you said about consumerism really interesting, about how consumers were like destroying, kind of just devouring resources rather than kind of using them in a way that they'll recreate themselves.
Right.
And it's not a sustainable system.
Well, it really struck me when you were talking about how people say, like, oh, the culture of violence or culture of war and stuff like that, and you said that that's not culture, it's uncultured. And I was thinking about it, like, the entire time, and I was like, wow, it really shouldn't be considered culture or anything, so.
But we are in using this language is very... So there's this kind of many languages we are now commonly accepted we are using. I used to point out the religious intolerance. This is also in a contradictory world. If someone is religious minded, he or she can never be intolerant. If someone is intolerant, it is the most powerful evidence the person is not religious minded. But we use religious intolerance and also religious tolerance. That's also a very bad word. Religious are to be respected, not to be tolerated. Tolerate means it is unacceptable to me, but I'm just tolerating it. Sorry.
I thought you said how you were saying how people only compete to win was very interesting, and how if more people competed to lose and just to learn, it might be a very different world.
But there is a word we are very commonly using, free and fair competition. This is being used by the corporate world also. There must be free and fair competition. And you are competing, and what is considered to be fair? That is one question I cannot answer. The other question is how you can be free in the competition. So freedom means you are free to win or you are free to lose, but that freedom is not used by anyone.
Free to destroy the opposition.
Right, yeah.
I thought it was interesting what you said about nonviolence as a strategy is not really nonviolence.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting because I know, you hear a lot in community organizing or political organizing, nonviolence as a strategy. So I'm thinking a lot about that,
Yes.
that it has to be beyond strategy to a way of life.
Right, yes.
I was really surprised to hear about your friendship with Jedu Krishnamurti. My first knowledge about education, when I started exploring what real education meant to me, I started reading him, and he talked about really difficult things, and I didn't really understand, but I kept going back because I knew he was talking so much more about classroom education, and he talked about real education, so that caught my attention, and yeah.
Very good. Mm-hmm.
And he talks about a lot of concepts about love, fear, compassion, lots of things that he's experimented in his schools abroad.
His dialogues with the teachers and his dialogues with the students, they are very interesting, and they are dealing directly with the education system. If you read some of these books, may be more interesting.
His work is very similar to the work of Humberto Maturana,
Yes.
And Maturana, who I've worked with, who met recently with the Dalai Lama, fairly recently, a few years ago with the Dalai Lama.
I
They
see.
had a wonderful conversation.
Great.
But he talks about the concept that learning is going to happen best in an environment of intimacy, trust, and cooperation.
Right, yes. Yes, exactly.
In dominance and submission, people become less intelligent. And he said our very humanity is based on intimacy, trust, and cooperation. Intelligence and language, he says, evolved because of intimacy, trust, and cooperation. Very similar to what Krishnamurti writes about.
Yes.
So as teachers, it strikes me that we need to ask ourselves the question when we walk in the classroom door, am I conserving intimacy, trust, and cooperation?
Right.
Or am I conserving dominance and submission? Most systems are based on, education systems are based on dominance, submission, competition.
Exactly.
And I think it's time for us to change the education system. Otherwise, humanity, I think, is in very deep trouble.
Yes. A lot of challenges are there.
A lot of challenges, yeah. And you've said the same thing in as many words, so there's a lot of great people who agree. Thank you very much for taking the time with us. This is an incredible gift to all of us, and hopefully as we put the videos together and put them up online, these ideas are important ideas that need to spread out. And now we can actually use technology maybe to deal with some of the effects of technology. If we look at our team that we bring with us, Shmuel, our photographer here, he's been on many, many journeys with us. And Devin, who was a student at Mount Madonna as a videographer, he contributes his time. Kayla's contributing her time as a social media person.
Great, great.
And so there's a whole team behind the kids working for the sake of bringing these ideas out into public. And it strikes me that a big part of the strength of the Tibetan community is also based on cooperation.
That's right, yes.
And it's something that we all can look at as an example. So we're very grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone.